The views expressed on the Midvale Main Street Theater podcast do not necessarily reflect the views of the Midvale Main Street Theater, its owners, advertisers, or volunteers.
But I didn't know how much heart is in that show, and I didn't know how relevant. I didn't know that it was gonna just change my whole life.
Hashtag never Daphne.
Sorry.
It's 2:00 in the morning right now, and I just want to go to sleep.
I will never say to anybody that motherhood is not crazy.
Well,
It's a trip.
it looks like it's 30 pounds
I
from those
literally
pictures.
did
so.
take Excedrin before wearing that
Oh,
wig.
no.
That's not even a joke. I've got to have that performing outlet. I feel like that's always been a part of my character.
How could you marry somebody that is such a hate for good music?
Steiner! You've got to really just kind of lay it all out there.
Line! Hey guys, what's going on? My name's Michael, and welcome back to the Midvale Main Street Theater podcast. Just have a couple bit of news items here before we jump into the episode, so let's just go ahead and go over those. Okay, first thing, big announcement from Midvale Main Street Theater. The next show has been announced, and it is, drum roll please. It's a very lame attempt at a drum roll. It is Addams Family Young at Part. So it is a junior show, but it is Addams Family. They actually did a survey for what show should be the next junior show a couple of days ago, and seems like you all agreed with me that Addams Family would be an amazing choice, and that's what they went with. So excited, so happy. I know that the auditions are actually coming up tomorrow, September 12th. So if anyone has kids that are by chance between the age of 8 and 18 that are listening to this, go ahead and get them ready for the auditions tomorrow because it is coming up. But so exciting. It's going to be incredible. So I'm so excited for it. Okay, and then the next thing is that Mamma Mia is just around the corner here. It opens on the 27th of September, so we're getting into the home stretch here. Very exciting, very cool. I've been able to actually sit in on a couple of these rehearsals just because my wife's in it, and I'm actually prepping to be on the production crew of it. So it's been really exciting. There's so much talent on that stage. It's actually kind of amazing how well they're combining everybody's talent and just the amount of people even on that stage, but everything from the costumes to the sets, lighting, it's all going to be incredible. So you don't want to miss this show. I keep saying that, but it's so true. Go to midvaletheater.com to grab your tickets because I'm sure that it's going to sell really well. You're not going to want to miss this show. I guarantee you that. Okay, and unless I'm forgetting anything, that's kind of what we're looking at as far as news goes. So I wanted to go ahead and jump into today's episode. Today is part 2 of my interview with Ashlee Howell. I hope you guys liked part 1. I thought it was really interesting to kind of hear her perspective on the singing and dancing group that she grew up with and also her high school experiences that kind of shaped her and brought her into this community theater space. So this week we are looking at her community theater experience. We're looking at pretty much all of the parts that she's played at Midvale and kind of going more in depth with them. And if you guys like part 1, you are absolutely going to like part 2, just because it's really interesting to kind of talk to another performer and hear their perspective on why they chose the parts that they did, or what motivates them to do a good job and put a good character on stage and everything in between. So yeah, sit back, relax, and enjoy this week's episode, part 2 with Ashlee Howell. Thanks, guys. All right, well, we are back. This was a very long, successful break for sure. No, we just kind of kept rolling anyway, but yes, we were going to jump into how you heard about Midvale and coming into that. So let's go ahead and do that. How did you hear about Midvale and All Shook Up?
So I heard about that pretty randomly. It was actually one of my Encore teachers, one of my dance teachers from Encore. She'd posted on Facebook that she was choreographing.
Okay.
All Shook Up. And she said, she was like, friends, Encore friends, dance friends, I remember her saying, come play with me. Come play with me in this show. She wanted her friends to come and audition.
Gotcha.
And I actually wasn't there for the auditions. I came for the callbacks. So.
Oh, wow. So you were like your diva before even going to Midvale.
No.
Perfect. Well, you hear about this, but after taking such like it was a couple year break at least from high school into All Shook Up, right?
Yeah.
So coming
Several
into
years.
this, perfect. Did you have to kind of relearn how to audition and do callbacks and everything, or was it something like riding a bike kind of thing?
I by no means had planned on it. I want to say it was like literally the day before, if not day of, that I went. I remember actually feeling pretty proud of myself for being so spontaneous as to go do it.
Gotcha.
I
Cool.
must have just been in that kind of mood. I feel like I was kind of feeling really complacent in my life at the time.
Okay.
And so I just wanted to do something like that. And I don't remember feeling nervous. I think
Cool.
probably because I didn't make the audition.
Hmm.
I was coming in for the callback process, and I think I felt pretty comfortable.
Cool.
Because I came right in for the dance callback, and once I feel like I was already comfortable with Haley.
Mm-hmm. Haley was the encore teacher you're
yeah.
talking about. Mm-hmm.
Yep. And yeah, I feel like I was comfortable with her choreography, and Midvale just like it just is comfortable. I don't know how to explain it. I feel like it just like has, at least to me, it's got like a really comforting vibe to it. So
Okay.
I've never felt like out of place or.
So walking in the doors to come to that callback, did you feel that immediately? Or
I really feel like I
Okay.
did. I just like could see myself there.
Cool. Perfect. And it worked out. You were
Yep.
there for sure.
Yep.
Cool. So from there, well, I guess I should ask first, did you know that the Rosses were like the owner operators before you came, or was that like a surprise as you came in there?
I feel like I must have known that because I was definitely Facebook friends with Cassidy, and I'd seen all of her posts that she was doing shows.
Okay.
So I feel like I must have known that it was
Gotcha.
that was their theater, but I'd not seen her since New York. And Cassidy and I think we were just kind of acquaintances.
Really?
Like I feel like we were friends, but kind of just in passing. Like we were never really in the same dance group as each other. We went on that tour, but I don't really feel like we'd ever really talk. Like we liked each other,
Right.
but I don't feel like we knew each other crazy well.
Sure. Gotcha.
So I knew
Okay.
of them, and I must have known that it was their theater. So
Right. Okay. So then coming in and starting these rehearsals and everything, how did that feel? Like, was that weird? Did you feel right at home?
I must have felt right at home because those memories, like I remember them, but I don't remember them as anything like out of the ordinary for me. So I must have felt at home with that.
Cool. Okay, so coming into a community theater rather than like a high school theater or anything, what were kind of the differences that you felt between the high school shows and then a community theater show?
I felt like my relationships with the cast members were a lot more, like I felt a lot closer to them. I feel like I
Okay.
bonded a lot more.
Gotcha. Do you know why?
I think just the space. Honestly, and I think just not having the pressures of being in high school, honestly. And like, I mean, there were age differences for sure, but it didn't feel the same as in high school where you're looking up to the seniors and you're like, oh my gosh, they're the seniors and I'm the sophomore. It wasn't like that. I feel like it was just a lot more laid back.
Okay.
And just felt, I still can't even think of the word that I'm trying to think of. Just
Just you connected with the cast in a much more intimate way than you were
intimate's
used
a
to.
good way of putting it.
Okay.
Like intimate is a good word for just Midvale theater in general.
Agreed.
It's just an intimate experience.
Even you just
as an
performing,
audience
you mean.
member and as a performer.
So yeah, a lot more intimate, and you just really connected with the people at this theater and everything like that. And I'm sure that's kind of what led you into wanting to keep going and ultimately going into Sweeney Todd next.
Yeah, I just had such good relationships with everyone there. I feel like one of the things that that I remember always saying about Midvale was that I didn't feel any drama. I literally hadn't had a dramatic experience. And I mean, I've been there for so long now that of course I have, you know, like I've at least like witnessed them or been a part of them. Like we've all had
It's
that.
just gonna happen with
Yeah.
30 people stuck in a room
Yeah,
together.
but for so long I didn't have that there. And I just had such close relationships with everybody. And I didn't feel like there was any drama. And I remember specifically saying that what I loved so much about Midvale was that I could walk in there and walk up to any person and just be an idiot and be myself and just be silly and be
Right.
funny. And I felt so accepted by everybody, and I didn't feel self-conscious, which in like my day-to-day life I definitely do.
Gotcha.
That's like a definite like character trait that I have. So that's something that I didn't have to worry about there. So it felt like a second home to me, I think, for that reason. I just vibed with everybody there.
Right. So it sounds to me like it kind of filled the void that you were talking about with your encore.
Absolutely.
Stuff. Okay.
That's what I had been missing. And so I think that's why I have stayed since then, is like that's always been a void. That was a void that hadn't been filled until Midvale.
Gotcha. Perfect. Cool. Well, then, yes, you go from All Shook Up to Sweeney Todd. Did you know about Sweeney Todd at all before you auditioned, or kind of what was your...
yeah.
Okay. Because you're a big old creep.
Love me some Tim Burton, too. So
Perfect.
And I was, so I had definitely seen the movie, and I knew, obviously, like, the storyline, and it was more my type of show.
Right. Going back to the Crucible versus Music Man kind of thing.
Yes. So I was super excited.
Cool.
About Sweeney Todd.
So did you, when you came to audition for that, was Joanna the part that you wanted, or like what was your thought there?
Yeah, Joanna was definitely the part that I wanted. I feel like that's one of those shows where there aren't a ton of parts for that age group.
Right.
Where you're kind of just like, yep, it's either this or it's going to be ensemble, or I mean, one of the girls there that I thought for sure would have been like gunning for Joanna really wanted to be Toby, and she got casted as Toby, and she was amazing, but that's not where my head was at. I was definitely, I was wanting Joanna.
Cool.
For sure.
Well, and you got Joanna, so
I had to work a little bit harder for Joanna. We actually had 2 callbacks for that.
Okay.
So that's a kind of, that's like was kind of out of the ordinary. We had our auditions, then we had our callbacks, and I remember Tammy, like clear as day, I still remember her texting me, messaging me, and just saying, we're going to have a second callback. Like, I'm just torn between you and somebody else. And she was like, I just need to see a little bit more from you. So I remember, obviously, Greenfinch is Joanna's big song.
Right.
And she was like, I want you to practice that. I want you to come and like really show me everything that you've got. She was like, because I really just need to see that from you. I've got to decide between 2 people. She told me right up front. She actually had us do the callback with the person that she'd chosen to be Anthony. My buddy Corey.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. And
so when you get these texts from Tammy saying, I like you, but I want to see more.
Yeah.
What do you feel when you get those? Is that like flattering, or is it?
Absolutely. I felt so much pressure. I remember singing just Greenfinch like a million times in my garage, because you've got to be a little bit loud. And I was super nervous because it's still not my style of singing.
Well,
I had a lot to learn with that, and I don't even know how far I came with it, but
I mean, I've seen the recording of it. You sound awesome. So
it was really outside my comfort zone. It's not my style.
Right.
They had to work with me quite a bit.
Okay.
And I feel like the outcome it sufficed.
You were selling yourself short.
It
Crazy
did.
short.
It's just, it's not in my comfort zone.
Yeah.
But when I got that message, I was definitely flattered. I was super excited, but I felt the pressure.
Well, and you ultimately got the part.
Yeah.
So
I
that's
did,
awesome.
Which was so exciting.
Yeah. When you get that message, and you get the part that you're wanting, how did that feel? How did it feel trying to rehearse and bring this character to life once you did that?
I had never had any type of a lead role.
Right.
At all. I was so excited.
So there was never nerves once you heard that. You were just ready
once I got the part?
Right.
Oh, I was so nervous.
Okay.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was so nervous, but I was so excited.
Cool. Well, and was there anything that was particularly challenging or rewarding or anything about bringing Joanna specifically to life?
So much was challenging, so much was rewarding.
Okay.
Still just the vocal style was hard for me.
Okay. That was the biggest challenge.
I don't know if that was the biggest challenge or if that wig was the biggest
The
challenge,
wig,
which is
yes.
everybody's favorite joke to make.
I need to post the picture somehow, but that
You
wig,
really do. Maybe,
talk about it.
Maybe you just need to start like posting a picture with people's sessions, and mine can just be of my Joanna wig.
Right. Perfect.
So Tammy, I think, was going for the vibe of like the Broadway Joanna, which she's got a big blonde curly wig.
Okay.
And Tammy found one of those. She was so excited about it. It was an awesome wig. Like, it was one of those wigs you've got to embrace it and love it.
Right.
And I did that.
Well, and you've described it as like a 30-pound
It
kind of
30 pounds.
It looks like it's 30 pounds
I
from those
literally
pictures.
did
so.
take Excedrin before wearing that wig.
no.
That's not even a joke.
Wow.
It was a challenge for sure to work with it. But I loved it. It was
Cool.
kind of almost was kind of humorous,
Right.
which, I mean, I don't know if that was the intent, but it was kind of.
Yeah.
Because I feel like when I first came out, I had it under a cloak hood, and then I took that hood off, and I felt like I remember hearing like some.
Well, I was gonna say, with how tall that looked, it must have been like a KKK hood, you know.
Stop.
Anyway, well, yes, cool. So, I mean, it sounds like you really enjoyed your first
Loved
lead
it.
part.
Loved the cast members in that. I mean, we had stellar leads for that show. That was Jim and
fucking
Eve.
Dale.
That was Jim
And
fucking Dale
Eve
and
fucking
Eve.
Garcia.
Eve
We'll
fucking
call her.
Garcia. Yeah.
So, was that Jim's first show there, by the way?
That was Jim's first show there. Yep.
So, and
I remember that we hadn't really found like it was amazing that he walked in because I feel like he was just what the show needed for the Sweeney.
Yeah, and I've heard Tammy talk about people being perfect for certain parts.
Yeah,
and
that's
Jim
just such a
as
Jim
Sweeney.
role,
Exactly.
and Jim loves that role.
Right.
So
well, and this kind of leads into the next show, which I would say that you are perfect for the part. You got
it hurts.
putting that aside. Anyway, you're doing Sweeney, wraps up. You're feeling great about it.
I've got before we even
Please.
get into this. I sadly did not know much about Rent at all.
Okay. Well, that's what I was going to ask.
I'm really ashamed about that. I remember we went to our. That's one of my biggest regrets is not being more familiar with the show before we did it.
Okay. Well, before we get there, why don't we just like you're wrapping down Sweeney Todd.
Yeah.
You hear that Rent is going to be the next show that comes to Midvale.
So the biggest memory about that, I remember hearing talks of it, even just with groups of people like out in the back alley in intermissions and before and after shows. And I just remember hearing the buzz about Rent. And then one of the biggest things was I had my first cabin party. In Duchesne with the Rosses.
Yes, Tammy and Steve own a cabin
in
Duchesne.
Duchesne. It's the greatest thing ever.
It's so much fun.
Yeah, sometimes they've got cast parties there that they do at their cabin, which is amazing. And that was my first one was for Sweeney Todd. And I remember that group was so over the top excited about Rent. When we were there, it's typical to dance and sing and just like let loose at the cabin and people sleep over for the night. Yeah. And so they started playing Rent songs and a lot of the people in the cast knew every word to the songs. I remember feeling a little like on the outside of that because I didn't know exactly what was going on. I didn't know. I'd seen the trailers for Rent, the movie.
That's it.
The
just
film.
the trailers.
Yeah, I had just seen the trailers. Yep, for the
Okay.
film. That's all I'd seen. I remember all the buzz about it, but I had never gotten into it. Not that I wasn't into it. I just had never.
Just not one of those shows that came on your
I
radar.
just hadn't seen it. Yeah.
Right.
And so I wasn't super familiar, but they loved it so much. And I remember people telling me specifically. I remember Steve telling me. I remember other cast members that I don't know if it was just because I was a dancer or what, but I remember people specifically telling me that I needed to audition for Mimi.
Okay.
I remember watching the movie with one of my cast members from All Shook Up, my friend Audrey. I remember watching highlights of the Broadway Mimi with my friend Bryce. I remember picking a song specifically
for that character.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, just because that's what I'd been told.
Right. So that was my next question is that do you think that was why you wanted her specifically? Like if you were to watch the show, would you still gravitate toward Mimi as a character before you did the show?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay.
We watched the show. I fell in love with the character. I fell in love with the show. I bawled like a baby. And then I watched highlights of Mimi and I was hooked from that point.
So my next question, kind of random question. If you say that you watched a bunch of highlights, who was your favorite Mimi? Who is your like canon Mimi, if that makes sense?
It was Renee, and it was not Daphne.
Never Daphne.
Never Daphne.
Hashtag never Daphne.
Sorry, and I know she's the original, but no.
No, it's just because you're the original doesn't mean you're the best.
No,
Yeah, I mean,
no.
For the most part, that's true for Rent casts in general, but not for Mimi. I will
Right.
definitely give that to you.
No,
Okay.
no.
Perfect. Well, cool. So,
I loved Renee. Yeah,
yeah,
she's great.
She was so good. Anyway, so you research the show. You know that Mimi's the part. You come and audition. How'd you feel?
Oh, I've got a great story about this too.
Perfect.
I'm sorry, Michael.
No, this is perfect. This is what it's all about.
This is the best story. I walk in for my audition. I was super excited. I was really good friends with my friend Bryce Cameron at the time.
And Bryce has done a couple shows at Midvale.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. He's done a few. I actually met him in Sweeney Todd.
Mm-hmm.
He did Legally Blonde.
Right.
And then
Anyway.
he in Dog Sees God?
Yes.
He's done shows. Yeah, at Midvale. He's done a few.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, he loves Pink so much. He found me an awesome Pink song that was definitely the tone for the character that I needed.
Sure.
It was like right up my alley. We couldn't find a minus track. I did a cappella. Sorry, but I did. So I do the audition. I was feeling pretty good about that. And then I will never forget the choreographer was Aaron Ford. And he says to me at the audition, he was like, so they had me sing Seasons of Love too. So I sang my Pink song, and then they had me sing a verse from Seasons of Love. I actually sang the wrong verse, which so embarrassing. So embarrassing.
Still, it
and then
works.
afterwards, Aaron was like, hey, so one thing I'd like to see you do, can you just, and I know he was just trying to put me on the spot, but he's like, can you die for me? And
Die
I just,
for you.
yeah, I just looked at him and I was like, can I die for you? What? Like I was so confused.
Like, is this a poem or what are you doing?
Yeah. And never in my brain, like guys, I'd watched the movie. I knew the storyline, didn't connect for me. And I was like, can I die for him? Sure. Like I'm going to do the most dramatic death of all time. So I fall back so dramatically. I'm pretty sure I made like the noise and like, yeah, I did the super dramatic death. And it wasn't until I had left the building that I was like, okay, he just asked me to die because Mimi's character,
Right.
spoiler, almost dies. And I just did it in the most dramatic, like, oh,
That's so funny.
it was hideous. And I texted Aaron and I was like, I'm so embarrassed. I was
Right.
like, I finally get why you asked me why you asked me that.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
Yeah, I hope people remember these things because I fainted like an idiot.
That's so funny. I love it. Well,
So
I mean,
good.
you got the callback for sure.
Got the callback.
Yeah. And how did the callbacks go for?
Callback was great.
Cool.
We
Well-
sang the bridge about tonight, which is the best part about tonight, and it was great.
Cool. Well, and you did well enough to get the part. You got the part.
I remember exactly like how I found that out too.
How so?
I think it was a weekend. It was like a Saturday, and I woke up pretty late because guys, I'm a lazy person, and I had stayed up pretty late. I went out with my friend Corey, and then I'd woken up like close to noon, guys. And
That's
checked
about when I found out
so
too.
bad.
though,
And
so-
I checked my email, and I remember it specifically. Like I'll never forget it. And I just cried.
Yeah.
Was so excited. But still, as excited as I was, I'm still sad that I didn't know the show as well as I wish that I had, because as excited as I was and as grateful as I was, I just don't think it even compares to how I would have felt had I known the ride that I was about to
exactly
be on.
what you're getting into.
Yeah.
For sure. That's actually a perfect segue into what I was like going to ask you about next is how were rehearsals and like what really made you fall in love with this show and with this character specifically?
I feel like I was already pretty hooked on the character. I had a lot to learn about just the show as a whole. I understood the message. I'd watched the movie. I'd watched, I understood the storyline. But I didn't know how much heart is in that show. And I didn't know how relevant it is. And I didn't know that it was going to just change my whole life. And I also think that I love the show as much as I do because of like the place that I was at in my life at the time too. Unfortunately, as far as rehearsals, a lot of what I remember is like what I was going through at the time. Just in my life. Like I remember there were some big changes in my life. Like there was actually a lot of like death in my life around that time in the rehearsal process.
Is that something you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, we can talk about it. Like I had my grandma pass away. I remember our family dog, my puppy, passed away during that too. So I feel like I was super vulnerable at that time. I went through a big move too, and like just big changes.
Right. Well, and you met your future husband there.
And I met my future husband there and had no idea.
Right.
So it was a really crazy time. I remember the rehearsal process, but I really just remember that I was so emotional throughout that process, and I was just going through a lot, and that was the only place that I wanted to be. Like literally the theater was the only place that I wanted to be, and I feel like that show has got such a hold on my heart because of the show itself, but just because it was exactly what I needed at that time, and just that feeling of how I felt being involved in the show.
Sure. Gotcha. Well, and I've heard as much from other people too. It's like
I feel like at Midvale, it's just so much more of a personal experience. You get to know everybody on you know even the production team so well. Mm-hmm. You know the owners so well. They start to feel like family to you. I don't know that you would have that on quite that level anywhere else.
Well, and speaking of the owners specifically, I don't want to like get too far up their butts necessarily, but Tammy and Steve are like, they will do anything for you.
They are two of the most generous people that I've ever met. Absolutely. And they care on a very personal level for each person that enters their theater.
Definitely.
And I think because it's such an intimate space, we're able to have that experience.
Absolutely, for sure. Well, yeah, I mean, I absolutely understand because that's when Midvale became my home. And same with, it sounds like with you, with Rent and everything for like sure. that. So perfect. Okay. Well, so after Rent and after all the tears had been shed and we had said goodbye to these characters and everything like that.
Yeah. I was a mess after that show.
Sure. Exactly.
Honestly, like I could not let it go. I felt like I've choreographed a couple of the kids shows there and their closing nights are always the end of the world for them,
right?
Which is understandable. Like that's just par for the course. Like that's how that goes for kids at that age, even for adults, let's be honest. But for kids, any show that they've been involved in, like they cry. They all cry on closing night, and I've never felt so much like that than I did after.
Well, yeah, and
it was like the end of my life.
If you go on YouTube, you can see our closing night of Rent, and the Rent is a mean show for actors in that most of the second act is saying goodbye.
Yep. Act 2.
Anyway, so you see these, like, I was tearing up during that show.
I'll never forget. I will never forget Carolyn's mic still being on, what she said.
Yeah.
I will never. And it's probably because you and I have watched it so many times that we would know this. But our awesome friend Carolyn, her mic happened to be on at some point when she was backstage on Act 2 for like 2 seconds.
It was right after the Goodbye Love.
Yeah, it was right after that. And she just for a second, she was like, I can't stop crying. And it was such like a vulnerable and like raw moment.
Yeah.
That I hear it in my heart still.
Absolutely.
Like, literally breaks.
Absolutely. Well, anyway, so we're done with Rent. We put that in the books, but then Charlie Brown is the next show that happens at Midvale. And I wanted to get into this because you were part of the production team for Charlie Brown.
Right.
So how did that come about?
So I actually auditioned for Charlie Brown. And I remember that Tammy didn't really hold callbacks for that, right? Mm-hmm. So she had her, which I actually kind of think is super awesome. She had her auditions and Tammy felt really strongly about who she'd seen at the auditions, and she kind of just casted the show from there. Yeah. And I couldn't even feel bad, honestly, after seeing that cast. It was an incredible cast. Okay. And she asked me to come on as a choreographer.
Was it the same night that she cast it? Do you know?
I don't remember.
Okay, but it was after the fact.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, for sure. After she had I'm sure after she announced the cast list and everything.
Gotcha. Okay. When you got that call, was that something that you were looking to do, or was that something like, I don't even know what I'm doing?
I remember that the message came about with her asking me to choreograph both Charlie Brown and Little Mermaid.
Okay.
It was at
Little
the same
Mermaid,
time.
which was right after Charlie
Yeah,
Brown.
it was
Okay.
at the same time. She said that she was interested in me choreographing both shows.
Okay.
And I remember being overwhelmed, but super flattered that she would consider me for that.
Cool.
I felt
Awesome.
really honored that she would. And
Well, because dance has always been such like a thing that you're so proud of too.
yeah. And I remember being just really honored that she trusted me to do that, because one thing that I have to say is just because you're a dancer does not mean that you're a choreographer.
Okay.
When I'm given that opportunity, I do a lot of research and I kind of obsess over it.
Okay.
But I will say that, yeah, I'm a dancer, but choreography doesn't come super easily to me,
Right.
as easily as it would to somebody else. I don't feel like I could make up a combination as easily as you'd think on the spot, being that I'm a dancer.
Okay.
And
Well, and that was my question with it is like, this was your first time ever doing anything like this. How did you go about coming up with these combinations? Because I have no idea how anyone could think of anything as far as dance moves go.
So I choreographed a little bit in high school, but again, I'd never considered it my strong suit. So I wasn't expecting Tammy to ask me to do this. And that really was why I was so excited and felt super grateful for that opportunity. But I'm sure I was like petrified.
Okay.
I'm sure I was. And I did a lot of research. I will watch like YouTube video upon YouTube video to get an idea of what the tone and the feel that the number should have. And then I'm very adamant that I like come up with my own choreography for it.
Wow.
And I'm way too much of a perfectionist for it to be a simple process for me. You've seen me, like you've seen me over the years, stressing about it.
Well, and you're very much, you're so proud of your work. And I love that about you. I think it's so cool. But yes, it's something that you are going to make sure is perfect. And it just...
To me, that doesn't mean that it's perfect in general, but yeah.
I will say that it's perfect. I will just say that right now.
Perfect to you, being biased. Yes.
No. So is choreography, do you have a passion for that? Or would you rather take acting over choreography every day?
My heart would definitely be in the performing aspect, for sure. But I love choreography because it's way more of a challenge for me, honestly, than being in a show. It's much more of a challenge. And it's kind of just as time consuming, honestly, as being in a show, at least for me, because like I said, I spend a lot of time on it, doing research and trying to make sure that I'm, somewhat proud of what I'm teaching and putting out there.
Sure. Cool. Perfect. Well, and that kind of leads us out of Charlie Brown. I'm sure that was an awesome experience for you, but you were anxious to get back on stage, I'm sure.
Yes, I was.
So the next show that we did, do you remember what it was?
Avenue Q.
Avenue Q. Perfect. Cool. So Avenue Q, you played Lucy the Slut. Yes.
That was just Mimi was the beginning, but that was just fell right in line with my
so I was going to ask
my typecasting at Midvale.
I was going to ask you a little bit later, but this is a perfect time.
All right.
Do you feel like you have that typecast at Midvale? Because going through your roles, I actually feel like it's not as big of a typecast as we may think.
I feel like I've had some pretty diverse roles. And there have been some roles actually that have multiple. I think the one I'm thinking of in particular, well, there's a couple. There's Janet and Roxy that have both sides.
Layers.
Yeah, they've got layers for sure. And I do feel like I've had diverse roles, but I always come back to feeling like that is my typecast. Yes.
Okay.
And honestly, I mean, I'm definitely not saying that it's wrong. It's what I feel, fortunately or not, most comfortable doing.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. So Lucy the Slut, was this again a part that you wanted in the show? Did you know about Avenue Q going in?
Yeah, so Avenue Q I kind of learned about along the way. It was one where I heard the hype about the auditions and I was super excited, and I learned a lot of what I knew about the show from friends who were kind of giving me a heads up about the audition.
Gotcha.
So I wasn't super familiar with it, is what I'm trying to say.
Sure.
But yeah, that was kind of mostly the part that I was going for. And I feel like because I wasn't super familiar, I wasn't going for much more than that. Because there's definitely more involved characters. But that was, yeah.
So, and I wanted to talk about Lucy specifically because she, I feel, is your first like character role at Midvale. Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay. So what ultimately drew you to that character, and then how challenging was it to play a character rather than the ingenues that you had been up until at this point?
I will start by answering your second question,
'Kay.
which is that a character role I feel like is always more challenging for me.
Okay.
And I think it might even be a mental block for me. I definitely consider my weakest suit to be my acting. I've always felt that way because I grew up a performer, singer, dancer. That's what performing meant to me, is singing and dancing. So, and I loved my high school experience. We didn't really touch on this very much as far as what I learned. I had so much fun, and maybe it was just like my takeaway from it, but I didn't learn very much in the way of the fundamentals of acting. I really didn't learn much as far as character development, and as far as being directed, and that might just be my parts in my high school musical shows, you know.
Okay.
But yeah, there's a lot that I didn't know, and there's still a lot that I don't know. I feel like I've come a long way with it, but character roles are always a little bit more out of my comfort zone.
Right. So then bringing it back to Avenue Q, what about Lucy rather than Kate Monster, who's the quote unquote ingenue in the show? What about Lucy is what made you want to play that part?
I feel like Lucy is so much more of a me part.
Okay. Why is that?
Honestly, I'd never played a straight up villain. I mean, my favorite thing about playing Lucy was that I actually got booed in a couple of our performances,
Right,
which is the greatest thing.
Absolutely.
Honestly, the best feeling, because you know that
when you're a villain and you're supposed to be booed, that
oh yeah. If you're not supposed to be, then it's kind of like an office situation.
Right.
Isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, but I loved that, and I actually feel like it's much more within my comfort zone, funny enough, to play a scandalous what is even the word for her?
Slut.
She's a slut, but she's
like a manipulator. Is that kind of what you mean?
She's a manipulator, but she's very like, she's bratty. She's the villain.
Right.
And that came more naturally to me.
Cool. Well, okay, perfect. And the last question I had with Avenue Q, and it's kind of more of a general question. That cast in particular got so close, and we just loved hanging out with each other and everything. Do you know what in a cast makes that? Because we've had like a couple that I can think of that have such a great cast and such a great chemistry rather than others. Do you know what that is, or is it just kind of a random thing?
I will say that it helps that our cast for Avenue Q was so much smaller than what we have typically had. So again, it's so much more intimate to be a smaller cast like that. Definitely. I feel like that was a big part of it. I feel like in that case, it was the size of the cast and just the people, like the personalities just vibed together. Gotcha. And it was such a laid back cast. Yeah. And it also helps whenever you've got a cast that there's zero drama. Like literally we did not have those issues at all. Sure.
And I was wondering, as I was prepping for this, I was wondering if their age had anything to do with it.
We had some people that like we were more on the older side. Yeah.
I mean, I think I was the youngest in that cast, and I was 21 at the time.
You're a baby.
But us two, I think we're the youngest by at least a couple years. Everyone else was 30s, even into their 40s,
Steina.
50s.
Yeah.
Steina, yes. Yeah. She was in it too. But yeah, there was only a couple of us.
You were there too, Steina?
I didn't forget you, Steina. We love you so much.
I never forget you, Steina.
I have to do this because I forgot to when Todd did this, but let me just do this really quick.
Steina!
Okay, anyway.
I did it right into the mic, and you like reared your head back and did it, so mine's going to probably be a little
super
louder.
Loud. Anyway, okay, so Avenue Q, we're done with.
Please make that the opener to this episode.
For sure. It will be in there for sure. But anyway, we can't touch on every single show, unfortunately, just because we'd be here for 5 hours. But we come to a series of 3 shows here that are kind of a dichotomy of what dichotomy. I can speak, I promise. Of what you do at Midvale, because we have Legally Blonde Hairspray, and Spring Awakening. Those are the next kind of three. And the two, Legally Blonde and Hairspray, it seems are more dance-heavy ensemble kind of shows, and then Spring Awakening's much more about the performance.
Character.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So is that something that you're conscious of, or is that like, why do you choose the shows that you do?
I feel like Hairspray and Legally Blonde are kind of comparable in just the tone of them. Like, very big cast, very dance heavy. Those two shows, like the busiest and most exhausted I think I've ever been. They're just huge productions, so
Right.
many costume changes. I was multiple characters in Legally Blonde, and that I worked really hard in that show. That was more exhausting, probably that show, if not Legally Blonde, like than any other show I've ever done, which happens in the ensemble.
Sure.
Like, you work so hard.
Yeah.
Spring Awakening's kind of like in a league of its own, though.
What do you mean by that?
Just the tone of the show is totally different.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that something that you look for in a show, like the tone of it? Then?
I don't know if I should say look for, because I feel like I've done lots of different kinds of productions, but it's definitely more what I'm drawn to.
Okay, so after those three, after Spring Awakening, your next show back, I should say, but it's ours because we kind of do the shows together pretty much, is Rocky Horror Show.
Yes.
Yes. So
Rocky.
So Ryan, who's the director,
Yeah.
he is such a passionate person about this show.
Yeah.
Do you remember anything about him talking about the show, like coming to you and speaking to you about it or anything?
Beforehand?
Yeah.
Funny enough, as all theater people do, when you hear like the buzz about the next show, I feel like a lot of theater people are quick to be like, is there a part for me in that show? Like, what part would that be? And it's funny because I feel like from what I'd heard, people told me to audition for Magenta.
Okay.
Which I was actually super interested in doing.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. And I did, but yeah.
It panned out a little different. Perfect.
Yes.
Well, okay, so you come and audition, you're thinking about Magenta, and then you come to the callbacks. They called you back for Janet pretty exclusively, is that correct?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so.
Gotcha. Okay. Were you disappointed?
No.
Okay.
I was so excited. I feel like I hadn't really been like in the talks for that role. And I'm sure I wanted to be.
Right.
Like, I know I would have loved to play that part, which sounds funny. I did. But
Sure.
I remember when everybody was talking about it, I don't feel like my name was a front runner for that part.
Okay.
And I feel like, yeah, I was super excited.
Cool. Good. So you get into this show, and did you know kind of the I guess lore or like the cult status that this show had occurred? Okay.
Oh, yeah. I saw this show. Oh, yeah. I watched the movie.
You had.
I had watched the movie
And-
many years before.
And
prior
you still
to being
wanted
in
to
it.
be in the show.
Absolutely. Oh, so much more
Okay,
because of having seen it.
Because I watched the show. It was on TV once. I watched, I think, up through Damn Janet, and I was like, the hell is this?
It is in a league of its own, that show, but
yeah, it's so bad.
I love it. No, I love it.
Yeah.
I loved it then as like little early middle school me watching the show, and I loved it when I auditioned, and I love it now.
Sure, and it's a fun show to do on stage for sure.
It's
but
so
like,
kooky and so quirky and fucking weird, and I
Well,
actually
it's-
love Rocky.
me too. Now after doing it,
This is one of the few that I loved beforehand. I mean,
Gotcha.
that I knew beforehand.
really okay.
Yeah.
Because I don't think I was aware of that when we were talking
Yeah,
about
I knew it
auditioning
was a
for
thing.
it or
I knew
anything.
it was a thing that people loved, that had like a following, and yeah.
Gotcha. Cool. So was it intimidating or anything about bringing that character to life, or was it just something you kind of took in stride?
Janet was to date by far the most vulnerable and out of my comfort zone I have ever been.
Okay.
And I still watch that performance when I mean, to go back on YouTube and watch the performance, I still kind of can't believe that I did the things that I did.
Okay. So how did you force yourself out of your bubble for for that show?
I honestly feel like I just had to clear my mind and do what Ryan told me to do. That's literally how I felt.
Gotcha.
And I feel like Ryan and Tammy know that I had to do that. I feel like there were times where they talked to me specifically and they were like, I know that this is outside of your comfort zone. Like, I know that you're pushing outside of what would be comfortable for you.
Wow.
And I absolutely did. And yeah, like I said, it's hard to believe that I got so comfortable in that role looking back on it, because it's like a whole different level of that typecast that we had talked about.
Sure.
I mean, there's a side of her that is that typecast. There are other sides to her too. She's a layer character for
Definitely.
sure.
Well, cool. And yeah, that was my next kind of question, kind of segues perfectly into that. This was our first show that we did with Ryan as the director. What are you doing? Ashlee, are you playing Yahtzee right now, dude? It is. We're doing the podcast right now, dude. What are you doing? Oh, man. Well, anyway, I'm going to try and power through this because it's 2:00 in the morning right now and I just want to go to sleep. But anyway, this is the first show that we did with Ryan as the director.
Yeah.
How was that, working with him rather than Tammy, who we usually work with?
Working with Ryan was pretty different, and I had a great experience with him, like I do working with Tammy as well.
Okay.
Ryan had a super specific vision for what he wanted for Rocky, and that was great for me because I was so out of my comfort zone, like we talked about. So he kind of knew exactly what he wanted out of Touch Me, out of Janet's Big Number,
Right.
which was good because I was in a really vulnerable place for that number. You've got to really just kind of like lay it all out there for that, and just like the costuming for it and just everything. So him knowing exactly what he wanted was really good for me.
Gotcha. Cool. Perfect.
In that number for sure.
Awesome. Well, and yeah, I'm just looking at my time, and I'm sorry we're going to have to kind of rush through these a little bit, but going from Rocky, we had a little bit of a break, but then we jump into Chicago is the next big show. Yes, and that's one of your favorites. For sure. Yeah, perfect. And you mentioned on this podcast a couple episodes ago that you were very proud of Roxy's as an acting performance specifically. How did you prepare for the acting side of it, and what was the difference between that and some of your other characters that you had done?
I actually don't feel like I did crazy in-depth character study for Roxy.
Okay.
Like I maybe should have. I feel like that was one that I just really connected to. That was a part that I really connected to, and I'm proud of that because Roxy's another layer character where she's got different sides of her personality for sure that you see.
And you can see that on stage for sure. I wasn't in that show or anything, but I got to see you, and it was one of the first like times.
Every night, because you came like every night.
Yes, but it was one of the first times that I really got to like see you from an audience perspective act, and it was really like,
especially at Midvale.
Right. And I was very impressed for sure. Anyway, like I say, we're going to kind of rush through these as we go, but after Chicago, you took a little bit of a break from Midvale. Why is that?
Well, so we did do another show at another theater.
Right.
We went up to the Empress to do Legally Blonde.
Mm-hmm.
That was a super fun experience. That was right around the time that you and I got engaged.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
Oh, congrats. Who is Michael?
Yeah.
Who is that? Yeah, that was a super fun experience. And then on the surprise, so we got married and then we got pregnant.
Yeah. Perfect.
Had a baby.
Cool.
Yeah.
Perfect. And so that kind of kept you away from Midvale for a couple years.
Yep. Kept me away from all theater for a little bit.
So how is motherhood treating you?
So good.
Good.
So good. So crazy. I will never say to anybody that motherhood is not crazy.
Sure.
It is.
Well,
it's a trip.
Well, and we've said, even it's hard even though we have just the perfect baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's even with a baby that is just so laid back and
Right.
I'm guessing comparably very simple.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, cool. I asked because, like I say, it was a 2-year break between Chicago and then our next show.
Which was hard.
Absolutely. Well, so was it at all nice to have that break, or were you just anxious to get back on stage?
I was anxious the entire time, which, as we both know, we get overwhelmed sometimes being in shows, but we very shortly afterwards really miss that.
Within a week.
Yeah.
We are just like, I'm so anxious right now.
Yeah, like when you're in a show, sometimes all you want is to have time to yourself and to be lazy. And then the minute that you just want to be back in that swing again.
Right.
Of being in a show.
And so I'm sure it was difficult because not only did you you couldn't be in the shows rather than you
that
didn't.
was tough. Yeah, I've never.
You had no choice in the matter.
Yeah, I've never had to deal with that before.
Right.
I remember Rock of Ages auditions
you were so
coming
excited
up.
for Rock of Ages.
So excited. And I was really excited even to see it and not be a part of it because I love the music, but that is one that I would have auditioned for and probably done any role in too. So yeah, that was a weird feeling. I remember talking to so many of our friends and just being like, it's so weird to me that, I mean, even if I wanted to come and be there, I can't.
Right.
That was bizarre.
Right.
So.
Sure. Well, and that leads again into my next question. This, about the time that we got pregnant, was when she started doing the quote unquote revival shows.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did it feel knowing that you couldn't come audition for your part again, but seeing these parts getting portrayed again on stage?
Again, bizarre.
Okay.
Like it always felt a little bizarre, and I'm happy that I went to see each one of those productions because they were all very different shows. And I feel like that just made it easier to watch. It wasn't my same show. It wasn't like redoing my same show over again. So it was a completely different show, and
it kind of softened the blow a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it doesn't feel like your same show that you did anymore. And I was nothing but happy to see those shows and happy for my friends that got to play those same roles and take their own spin on those characters.
Cool.
So
awesome. Perfect. Well, and then we have Salem. You know, he's the cutest baby in the world, and he's able to, be independent and go hang out with grandparents and everything like that. So after that, we do this little show at Midvale called American Idiot. So how did you hear about American Idiot? What brought you, why did you want that to be your big return to Midvale?
I had heard talks of American Idiot from our little intimate group of theater friends for years. From Christina, from Ryan.
Pretty much since we got to the theater, right?
Yeah, I'd heard about it. We had an opportunity to go see it. You and I couldn't make that. And I kind of wish we had several years ago because I could have been in love with American Idiot all this time. But, and then it was pretty suddenly that Midvale had decided to put on the production. I was super happy for Ryan. I know he's passionate about the show. And then as soon as we heard that it was even a consideration for real, we started watching and we started researching and we started learning more about, I mean, we knew a lot of the music, you probably more than me, but I knew a good amount, as we all do, of these well-known Green Day songs, and went and watched the show. And I remember you fell asleep one night and I watched the whole production by myself. Shout out.
Nice.
I was pretty proud of myself actually. And I loved it.
Cool.
Loved it.
Okay.
So.
And so this is another one. Again, this is me kind of knowing the answer before the question's even stated. But you originally thought that you should audition for Heather.
Yeah, this is another one of those things where I had talked to people beforehand and been like, who is there a part for me? Who should I audition for? And what I'd heard the most, I hadn't heard much about me auditioning for What's Her Name. And this is kind of funny because I related to Heather a lot, especially where she's got the unplanned pregnancy and she's singing about her baby and going through that whole thing. It's not like
Right.
I perfectly relate to that, but it's relatable to me
Definitely.
as a newer mother, for sure. And I feel like that's maybe where people thought that that's the part that I, would connect with and should go for.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember after watching the show and listening to the music, feeling a little bit of feeling some similarities between what's her name and Mimi,
Okay.
and actually wanting to take on the challenge of going for that role. And that specifically was my thought going into that audition and that callback.
Perfect. So, you come and audition for what's her name, you get the part, and you start diving into this. This is true of most of the female parts in American Idiot. She's kind of written with not much of like a specific character in mind. How did you build your character?
I do feel like I was able to delve more into the character, kind of based around Letterbomb, because before that, she's not really got many defining characteristics that are handed to you from the script.
Right.
Prior to that, she's kind of just, she's not like girl next door. She's written to be rebellious and to have a mind of her own and to be, I think, a strong female character. But Letterbomb gave me somewhere to go with the character.
Gotcha.
I feel like.
Sure.
So that was kind of where I was able to delve in, and then I kind of just filled in the blanks along the way and just working with the cast and everything.
Okay, so looking back and looking at your resume with Midvale and beyond, why this is a weird question. Why do you keep doing it? Because it's such a time-intensive, hard thing to do.
It is. There's a few different reasons, honestly. I feel like an answer that you would hear from a lot of the people who do theater, the challenge of it, the adrenaline that you get from being on stage. I've got to have that performing outlet. I feel like that's what I've tried to explain in previous questions that you've asked me and just going over my childhood. That's always been a part of my character, is just performing. So I've got to have, that's my creative outlet, and that's just a part of who I am and something that I feel like I'll always be doing in some form or another. But another good reason is all the dancing is a way for me to exercise.
Sure.
As a newer mother, it's the way that I get my
Cardio on. Perfect.
my cardio.
Well, and speaking of that, my next question is, you do have a year-old baby at home.
I do.
Yes. We've talked about how important it is that we want him to do theater growing up and everything. Why? Why is that important for you to have that be kind of part of what he does?
I think it's important for both of us as a way to connect with Salem. I feel like it's something that we will encourage with him, but if it's not a passion of his, I feel that you and I will be able to, move
Support
on
him
from
in
that
whatever.
and find his passions in life. I feel like we would be ecstatic if that included theater.
Right, for sure.
Yeah. Because it would be a way for us to connect with him. It would be something that we're familiar with, that we are passionate about. We've already got roles that we can see him playing.
He's going to play Mark Cohen at one point in his life. I
well,
know.
and not to just point out all of Michael's roles, but he is Charlie Brown. So
he's got
that's
face.
a part that he's got the temperament too.
For
though.
sure.
That's just a
Yeah.
part that he's born to play. So
Sure. Gotcha. Okay. Well, perfect.
we will support his dreams no matter what. but-
Absolutely. Unless it's football. I don't want him playing football.
Oh, that's just because it's just so brutal, and I don't want him to be hurt.
He doesn't need to have concussions every night.
No,
Yeah,
that's the worry. There is just
exactly.
physical.
Anyway, well then, yes, we're kind of to the point. Mamma Mia is your next little endeavor.
Right, we're in
Yes.
full swing with Mamma Mia.
Yeah, perfect. How's
rehearsals.
that been going for you?
So good.
Cool.
It's great. Big thing. The production team is just. I just wrote this in my bio, but stellar.
Kick ass for sure.
Stellar production team. It's one that is hard to pass up. I know it was even hard for you to pass up.
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason that Michael was able to, you guys, is because he is not a fan of ABBA music at all.
No.
I made him watch the movie with me, and it was painful for him, which makes me so sad.
I wonder it's a shitty
If
movie.
we want to judge Michael, he also doesn't like the Beatles, so that just shows you
Wow.
like where we
You're just airing
stand
out all of my
with Michael.
my bad blood here.
Yeah, this is it for me. Like, these are the things that keep me awake at night, wondering like if I can really do this for the rest
Well,
of my
here's the
life.
question: how could you marry somebody that is such a hate for good music?
It's not even that, Michael. It's not even that. It's just you just have to appreciate it for like the classic.
Well, I've told you as much about the Beatles, at least. Whenever someone else besides Paul McCartney, John Lennon, whoever else was sings it, I like the Beatles.
You just don't appreciate the time period. They worked with
Excuse
what they
me,
had,
I listen
Michael.
to like 50s and
You
40s
just-
music all the time.
You just don't appreciate. I'm sorry. I will never be able to understand your disdain for the Beatles. I will never back it up. I will never make excuses for you. I don't
need
get
you
it.
to. I can defend
I don't
that
get
on
it.
my own. Paul McCartney, John Lennon, shitty singers. There it is. Anyway.
Disagree.
Anyway, well, ABBA is just, it's
It's own thing.
80s was very much a time in music that was like, they're building bands to make money, and ABBA is the very top of that list of just bands that are out there to make the money. That's how I feel about it. So,
Give them my money.
exactly.
I love them. I love them. I love this. This is like it's
Dream
like
show.
fulfilling a dream for me.
Definitely.
Yep. It's like a
Cool.
check off the bucket list.
Right. Cool. And like I've said before, I've seen some of the videos for the choreography, and I've heard some of the music. It's going to be such an incredible show.
It is. It's going to be an intense show.
Yeah.
The choreography is super intense. It is like jam packed, which I love. It's exactly what it should be.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome.
I'm excited. It's going to be a longer run than usual. There's going to be a lot of hype for this show. It's going to be big for Midvale. I
For
feel
sure.
like it's going to be great.
Well, yeah, and I'm sure you feel very lucky to be a part of it too.
I do.
Perfect.
I would be involved in this production in any way, shape, or form. As
Right.
you know, I was not planning on doing another show
Yeah.
after American Idiot.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely not. And I saw the audition announcement, and I knew.
Cool. Perfect. Well, I'm very much looking forward to it for sure. But yeah, I think that's everything. I think it's time for bed for both of us. So thank you so much for taking all this time with me, for sure. I mean, you're kind of stuck with me at home anyway,
I was
but
going to say I take a lot of time with you, and
Yeah.
this is just kind of like a drop in the bucket, but
Yeah.
you're welcome.
okay, cool. Well, thank you guys so much too for listening. Hope you guys enjoyed it.
Yeah.
We'll see you guys later.
Bye.
As always, the Midvale Main Street Theater podcast is sponsored, funnily enough, by the Midvale Main Street Theater. Check out new and exciting updates on everything going on at the Midvale Main Street Theater by going to www.midvaletheater.com or check them out on Facebook and Instagram at Midvale Main Street Theater. You can find show notes and much more by going to our podcast's Facebook page at facebook.com/MMSTpodcast. Special thanks to Ashlee Howell, Joel Clark, and Matthew Petrucc for help making this show happen. I owe you guys the world. I've been Michael Howell, and this has been the Midvale Main Street Theater podcast. The views expressed have been mine alone and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Midvale Main Street Theater, its owners, or volunteers. If you've liked what you've heard today, please consider finding the Midvale Main Street Theater podcast on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, or whatever podcast listener you're using and dropping us a 5-star review. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at MMST Podcast. Thank you very much, and until next time, we'll see ya.